Sorry, I forgot about it. Yeah, hello everybody. Good afternoon or good morning or good evening. Not sure where you are. I'm sure you could be coming from various places. A big warm welcome to the RDA Virtual Plenary 18 Breakout 10. So this is my first time together with Naresh to be co-chairing this session. And I'm not sure whether, yeah, thanks Sandy for the applause. I'm not sure whether Chris and Birgit are here or even Andy. If they are, please just shout out to us and yeah, feel free to chip in. All right. So for those of you who are new to RDA, which stands for Research Data Alliance, they hold this virtual plenary or plenary session twice a year. So this is the second one this year. Yeah. And in between, there will be activities that are hosted, organized by the various interest groups. So today we are having this breakout session that is put together by the co-chairs, the old and the new co-chairs of the Libraries for Research Data interest group. We would like to introduce you the program and also to have everybody to introduce themselves a little bit. So maybe I will start first by introducing myself. So as shared, I just joined this Libraries for Research Data interest group just this year. And together with me, I have Naresh. I'm from Singapore. Naresh, could you tell the audience here where you are from? Yeah. A little bit about yourself. Sorry, Naresh, you are muted.
Yes. So good afternoon, everyone. Here in India, it's 1 o'clock. So I'm Naresh Kumar and I'm from Central University of Haryana. It's in India and I'm assistant librarian here. And I'm one of the co-chair of the Libraries for Research Data Interest Group.
Yeah, and, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, yeah. Hey, is there anything else you wanted to say, Naresh?
No, it's fine. We will look forward for this program.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I see Birgit. Birgit has been the co-chair, I suppose, for quite a few years. Maybe Birgit, you'd like to also give a warm welcome to the group here.
Yeah, thank you, and good morning all. So here in Göttingen, it's 8:30. So I'm based in Germany and work for the Göttingen State and University Library. And yeah, my other co-chairs are in the time zone where it's in the middle of the night. So Andy and Chris are based in the US. And yeah, so maybe Chris kind of intended to join us briefly, but I'm not sure he will make it.
So. Yeah. It's always challenging when we are across different time zones. Yeah. Yes. And yeah, thanks very much, Birgit, for joining us. So feel free to chip in, Birgit, and I run through so we will allow me to just briefly share about the interest group before we take a deep dive to the various presentations followed by some discussions. So Birgit, feel free to fill in if I miss out anything. So this group, I think some of the members here might already be more familiar than Naresh and myself. I gather from the website that there was some discussions in 2014 on the research data workforce. And then 2015, looking at skills, solutions, organizational models, and policy for libraries who are supporting research data. And in 2019, there were a few discussions and outcomes related to engaging researchers with research data. And there was even a wonderful piece of work that was done on the top 10 fair data and software things. So feel free to visit the interest group website, which you can also get a link from the Google Doc, which Stephanie has helped to put in the chat. So this year, there was a session that was organized by Chris, and the title was Exploring Past, Present, and Future Outcomes of the RDA Libraries for Research Data Interest Group. And it was a fantastic recap and update of these past outputs that were done. And there was also soliciting of ideas or what else, looking forward, what could be the new topics of interest. So in the last part of the session, we asked for contributions in the Google Doc, and we gathered that there were plenty of interest related to data repository best practices, capability building, may be for data librarians or data stewards, data repository managers, etc. There were interests in services surrounding the research data services. There was a suggestion to look at collaborations across the different units of an institution, as well as outside the institution. There was a suggestion to look at sustainability of services, models, etc. So I have a personal agenda. I was a research data management librarian, but now my university is interested in open science. So we have been rebranded as open science librarians. So we have to look at something that is even beyond what we were focusing on, institutional data repositories. We are looking at a bigger impact outside the institution. So I think that will set the stage maybe for us to start with the presentations for today. So we have a good mix of presenters. We have Dr. Sanderson Onye from, he is based in Sydney, but he started his research work in Indonesia. So I think he has a lot to share about his aspirations, his experience with open science in this region. And Tu Zhifang, she is a librarian. She will share more about her experience and work in the data repositories in China. The landscape is actually quite a broad landscape that she'll be sharing, especially the national landscape over there. She's also pursuing her PhD now. So I'm sure, data producer, data curator, etc. So she has lots of experience from both sides. Then Dr. Chuang Ting Rei on the open repositories for his work in Taiwan, followed by Dr. Megumi Ikeda, Dr. Nobu Tada, from this is, I believe they're from CSRDA. They are going to share with us their Ssjda experience, the social science Japan data archive experience. Then of course, feel free to put in your questions in the chat, and we have the Google Doc. Please help to put in some notes, and if you don't mind sharing your name and your contact, please give us your names and contacts in the Google Doc as well. So we hope to have some discussions and to discuss a little bit about how we're going to perhaps leverage on the sharing that we've gathered today, how we can move forward and to look at some of these new topics of interest, data repository, best practices, capability building, services, collaborations, and sustainability. All right, so I hand over to Sandy, who is our first speaker. Over to you now, Sandy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suni. So good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone, depending where you are. I'm just going to quickly share my slide, if that's okay. Great. If you can see my slide, just give me a thumbs up so I know that it's showing properly.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
we can see it. Thanks.
Great. So hi, everyone. My name is Sanderson, but I'm more commonly known as Sandy. It is an amazing privilege to be sharing a little bit about what I know. I'm incredibly honored to be among such incredible people and panelists. And I'm hoping that with a little bit that I'm sharing that maybe, hopefully you'll be able to get something today. So my talk today is about open science in Southeast Asia, implementation, autonomy, and moving forward. Now, one thing that I recognize is that in the last 10 years, first of all, let me just preface that my talk doesn't only pertain to data, but a much larger general landscape of open science, which I hope will give a little bit of context. But over the past 10 years, science has become completely unrecognizable. In my opinion, we've had the open science movement has taken root, even though it started originally over almost 100 years ago, but over the past 10 years, things have gone rapidly, lots and lots of changes, new developments, lots of new journals, countries, even on the highest government levels are talking about open science. But the issue is that determining the vision for a credible research system and implementing them are altogether really different challenges. So let me start off with a story where 2 years ago, some colleagues and I'm actually based in Sydney, but a lot of my work is in Southeast Asia and Indonesia. We wanted to do something relating to open science in Indonesia. And so we had this event called Advancing Science in Indonesia. Sorry, let me backtrack a bit and say, today's goal is to discuss the state of open science in Southeast Asia, to identify key issues for open science adoption in the region, and to identify ways forward. So back to Advancing Science in Indonesia, we had this event, and the issue is they've just instantiated new policies in Indonesia to boost publication count. So I don't know if you've heard, but even undergraduate students have to publish in a journal to get their undergraduate degree. And so there's a lot of issues surrounding the quality and the credibility of the research being published. So we decided to have this event, and we thought, oh, it's going to be a small event. Not a lot of people are going to come. But we ended up creating the largest science event in the country, where we had over 1,400 registrants from 40 academic and even government institutions, which led to us working on government science policy, working together with the government to instantiate and to really share more about the repositories and the open science infrastructure that's being developed nationally. But here's the thing, we got some really, really important feedback. And we spent the entire conference talking about open science. We talked about the replicability crisis, we talked about data share, we talked about pre-registration, and so on and so forth. And the feedback was, open science is great and all, but where there'll be regional researchers reaching out to us and saying, open science is great and all, but I have no resources for my lab. Open science is great and all, but how do I even begin to publish a paper? Open science is great and all, but what if someone, so on and so forth. And the issue is, when we think about open science, we often forget about context. And I know this, probably nobody in this room forgot about it, but a lot of the other places in the world, sometimes they forget that different scientific contexts exist in different places. And since my focus is in Southeast Asia and in Asia Pacific, my goal is to see that every single researcher's potential realized, no matter what university they're in, no matter where they are. And in line with the UNESCO Open Science Recommendation tagline is that nobody gets left behind. so that open science isn't only something practiced by the leading institutions, but no matter where people go, science is always open. However, in my time working in the region, I found a lot of implementation issues and factors. For example, there's a lack of science training and infrastructure in certain areas, which goes back to the, yeah, it's great, I want to share my data, I think this is a really good idea, but if I can't even publish a paper, or how do I even start in this scientific process? How do I come up with a scientific question? Then open science isn't going to be as relevant to them at the moment. Of course, we could argue differently, but from their perspective, there are certain needs that need to be met first. When we talked about open science to some other people in Southeast Asia, they're like, that's great and all, but I don't have research infrastructure. Where in some places, if they get finances, if they get a grant, they don't have a grants manager, it gets sent directly into their personal bank account. And so one of the challenges about adopting open science in some of these areas is that they're missing some of the basic infrastructure and resourcing that allow them the autonomy to then engage in open science practices. Another issue that we found is that there's a disconnect between grassroots, national, and subnational stakeholders, where in a lot of presentations, people are like, yes, we have open science, we've done this really big project and so on and so forth, without recognizing that even within the academic population, there are different layers that we need to take into account for. A clear example is the UNESCO Open Science recommendations, where they had the workshops and it was released, and across the region, a lot of the feedback, at least on a grassroots level, was this is great, but it doesn't really apply to us. So for example, in Southeast Asia, Philippines and Malaysia have incredibly strong national open science frameworks, open science movements. From the government level, the International Science Council in Asia Pacific is based in Malaysia. In the Philippines, a lot of ASEAN work is happening as well. However, on the grassroots level, Indonesia is overwhelmingly populated with open science enthusiasts. And so whenever we're evaluating a movement, because we don't want to leave anyone behind, we can't only look at one layer. It's great if it happens on a national layer, but what about the grassroots organizations and researchers who are in the region that often get overlooked? And because there's this disconnect, sometimes the resources, the training, and the evaluation gets a little bit skewed. There's differing existing culture that interacts with policy. For example, I draw a lot from Indonesia because that's my main area of work, where in Indonesia, a Nature survey rated Indonesia as leading the world in terms of open access. That's great. That sounds wonderful on paper. But what a lot of people don't know is that Indonesia has its own ranking system called Ssjda, where every single researcher in the country is ranked. And by posting preprints, or of course in predatory journals and open access predatory journals, they get points for that. And so a lot of people are abusing the system in order to boost their rankings. For example, not even open access, but let's talk about preprints for a second, where there's a lecturer who, in order to boost their ranking, because it's all computerized, they got every single one of his students to upload their assignment with him as a co-author on a preprint server. I think this was uploaded to EduArchive. And so as the open science people in the country, people came to us and said, hey, we need your help to sort this thing out. Because of the differing research context, especially the heterogeneity across Asia, open science or any sort of new initiative isn't going to sit on top of a culture, but it's going to interact with it, no matter what that looks like. And last but not least, there's the autonomy of researchers and institutes atop open science. In Indonesia, in the largest university, a first-year lecturer potentially earns $5,000 US for that entire year. When your entire livelihood is based on the papers you publish, there's not a lot of autonomy. And especially in countries where there's a lot more recent policy. And when I mean recent, I mean within the last 2 decades. For example, Brazil has instituted something called Qualis, their ranking system. There's a lot less autonomy, especially in places where there's not tenure. Researchers to adopt new behaviors that don't directly tie into their metrics become a little bit more challenging. And as I mentioned before, new interventions, and by this main open science, is not going to sit atop of existing culture, but rather it'll always interact with the existing policies, with the existing people, even the cultural heritage, where, for example, back again in Indonesia, people are very, very wary of sharing data. But people like sharing knowledge in terms of open access, and this is the positive type. And when we asked them, I spoke with the Director General of the Ministry of Research and asked him, why is this? And he said, it's just who we are. It's just our culture. And so there's a lot of underlying context that will interact with any open science initiatives. And so I talk about this a little bit more in a comment that I wrote last year. If you'd like to read it, please do. And I'd love to hear what you think as well. So it boils down to, so what can we do? And I'm just going to make some very brief recommendations, and I'd love to discuss a little bit more and hear from the other panelists as well. But the first thing is, if we want open science to take root in the region, we have to approach it as part of a network and a system, especially in labile and growing research systems, where research infrastructure is growing alongside open science. So what do I mean by this? If we just talk about open science to people who may not have research infrastructure, a lot of the time they'll just go, yeah, this is great, but why? And we actually have received feedback like this. But when we talk about open science, that goes hand in hand with resourcing, infrastructure, and training, and I'll talk about it a bit more in a second, people are more ready to adopt it. What does this look like? When Suni talked about before about the open science conference that we had 2 weeks ago that had 800 registrants from across Southeast Asia, in none of the marketing material did we ever say the words open science. In any of the posters, none of that. Why? Because a lot of the governments, a lot of the areas have so much pressure that when I think of open science, what is this new novel thing? And remember, you might be thinking, I'm in that country, there's a lot of open science, but yes, but it happens in layers. But open science was threaded throughout the whole thing. So for example, when we talked about, okay, this is how you access the literature. Of course, we talk about open access. When we talk about creating impact, we talk about science communication, open access comes in again. When we talk about evaluating the literature that might have false findings, that comes down to pre-registration, register reports. So open science isn't a standalone topic, but it's threaded in the entire scientific process. Everything we talk about, whether it's scientific integrity, whether, sorry, it escapes me, Suni was there, so she might be able to remind me what sessions that we had. But we also had somebody talk about, how do I make sure my work has impact? How do I make sure my work has quality? How do I do team science? But open science was threaded all throughout rather than its standalone object. And we frame open science according to government, institutional, individual needs rather than add-on or new behavior. And also, before I forget, Suni, could you also remind me if I'm about to go over time so I can cut it short? So a couple of years ago, we were actually in active conflict with the Indonesian Ministry of Research, believe it or not. We were actively in combat with them because they were actively against open science. At the time, their agenda was to create as many journals as possible. That's why we've seen thousands of journals within a couple of years. And they saw open access and preprints as the enemy of that. So when we did the initial conference in Indonesia, we didn't mention open science at all in the slightest, but rather we framed it according to their needs and their priorities. When we're thinking about science practices and policies to increase ownership and engagement, bring everyone to the table rather than only having a select few and then asking for feedback. It needs to be co-designed from scratch. And this is the one where we talked about where we had the conference in Southeast Asia with all these different partners. And we wanted to remove as many barriers as possible. We captioned the main sessions in 7 different languages, $2 per person. And in line with the last suggestion, we wanted to help everyone do open science. But rather than just telling them how, we got all the people in, whether they're from government, from institutions, from grassroots, from undergraduates, to come in hackathons and go, okay, what challenges are we facing in our country? And what can we do to overcome them? And from them, we develop policy documents alongside the International Science Council. The second one is team science, where we pool resources and skills. The benefits is, and if you're unfamiliar with it, it means that instead of each lab collecting their own data and doing their own research, we have a network of labs pooling all their resources and skills together, everyone's specialty, which allows us to have much more precise and much larger scale studies. It's higher quality with more credible output. It upskills open science and scientific skills so people can join it and they learn the skills from other researchers actively working on that project together. And it meets the publication requirements of academics because a lot of them like, I want to do open science, but it seems like it's going to slow me down. We know that's not true, But if they know they're going to a project, they learn open science, but it also helps them publish, then it's much more likely they're going to engage in it. An example is the Psychological Science Accelerator with a network of 700 labs. This was a project that we did over COVID-19 that ended up getting published in Nature Human Behavior, where we tested, is there a brief intervention to help us reduce stress during COVID-19? We learned how to do statistics better, how to write better, how to design studies better. Everyone in all psychological science researchers across the world could join in, and we get a high quality publication that we know is credible, open, and transparent. And so that could be one way to build open science in the region. And then last but not least, we need to integrate open science into implementation activities. Whereas I mentioned open science alone just becomes something additional to do, but the way we frame it needs to be threaded within all the research and science that we do. So I have the privilege of leading Indonesia's first national suicide prevention strategy with the WHO and the Ministry of Health. And here's what we do. We ask all the stakeholders, because there's resourcing is a problem in Southeast Asia. And we go, okay, but this is Indonesia. What data do you need in order to build suicide prevention, or ask the major question? We'll get everyone to say, okay, this is the questions that we need. This is the data that we need. Then we actually go and collect it for them using the money that we have. We make all the data open, which ties into the open data sort of principle of open science. Then we work with a national repository to store the data and familiarize researchers with the platform. So inadvertently, people working on this project, we're teaching them open science principles without them even realizing it. We're showing this is a necessary part of the scientific process. We then work with local journals to accept pre-registration and registered reports, which upskills the journals and makes sure that they publish more credible outcomes. So with a single project, we're addressing a lot of open science principles without it being an explicitly open science project, where they learn the principles, they get it, they see it in practice, where it's actually serving a goal. Why? Because the goal isn't to do open science, it's to do science in an open and transparent way. It is very much a means to an end. Just a disclaimer, I was quite ill yesterday, Suni knows, so if I'm speaking deliriously, please do let me know. But in summary, what I wanted to say is that, especially in the Southeast Asia region, the main takeaway is that if we want to promote open science, then we shouldn't promote open science. But rather, we should show, first and foremost, that open science, it needs to be threaded in every single area of science that we do, and we show them the results. I had the privilege of publishing another short correspondence about the localization of science, and it also taps into open science as well. So please have a look if you'd like. And thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Wow, that was really mind-blowing. I'm a librarian, so it's really useful to hear from the perspectives of the researchers. And you mentioned about how you make use of team science to work with, like you mentioned, did you mention 700 labs? And, you know, so that's a new dimension when it comes to research data collection, curation, preservation. And how are you going to make all that data that comes out from the team science in an open, timely and responsible manner? You mentioned fair data. So how do we extend the concept of fair data when it comes to new approaches like team science? And you mentioned pre-registration and registered reports. Wow. So what does it mean for data repositories, institutional data service providers? So I think that really gives us a very good background when we move into the panel discussion or group discussion later. So without further ado, may I invite our next speaker, Ms. Tu Zhifang, who is going to share about open data practices in China, focusing on data repositories, services, and promotions. May I invite Zhifang to share screen? Yeah, thanks very much, Zhifang. Would you like to perhaps do a self-introduction first? Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Zhifang from China National Science Library, Chinese Academy of Sciences. I'm now a digital scholarship librarian and a PhD candidate. My topic is open data practices in mainland China. And so there is a brief roadmap of open science in China. As early as 2003, Lu Yongxiang, as the president of Chinese Academy of Sciences, representing Chinese scientists, signed the Berlin Declaration on Open Access, and the next year, CAS and China National Science Foundation signed the declaration. 10 years later, CAS and CNSF, two of the most important science and technology departments in China, launched their open access policies. And the same year, National Science and Technology Library, NSTL, and the National Science Library, NSLCAS, joined Scope 3. And in 2016, the University Institutional Repository Coalition named chair funded, and now it has 51 members. And in 2017, NSTL and NSL signed OA 2020 initiatives, and till now there are 135 signatory libraries, and 16 of them are from China. And in 2018, we launched the first national level open data policy, and followed by provincial government policy and institutional policies. And then there is an overview of open data initiatives in China. Firstly, is open data policies. As just said, there are three level policies. The first is national one, launched in 2008, and soon after 16 of 31 provincial governments launched their implementation rules. And as representative National Research Institute, CAS, launched its open data policy in 2019. And secondly, there are about over 100 data repositories, data centers, and data banks as data infrastructures in China. And also we have made national data standards for data citation, data paper, and data harvesting. And the standards are continuing to increase. Thirdly, we also start data publishing and create 3 data journals, and we actively engage in data communities like today. So my presentation will focus on data repositories, data services, and data promotions in China. The first part is 3 levels of open data repositories shown as the figure. There are 3 colors representing 3 levels. The first is national levels. There are 20 national scientific data centers since 2019, and previously they are called scientific databases since 1980s. They are mainly sponsored by the Ministry of Science and Technology of China. And the second is institutional level. Taking Chinese Academy of Sciences as an example, there is a general data center in CAS, and including 16 institutional data centers and 18 discipline data centers, and 11 of them are selected as the national ones. And also several universities like Tsinghua University, Fudan University have developed developed their own institutional data centers. And the third level is library level. University libraries like Peking University and public libraries like Shanghai Library develop their open research data platforms and provide data services. And this list shows the details of 20 national scientific data centers. Some of them are registered or certificated by core trust seal are marked. And this table shows institutional data centers in CAS and in Tsinghua universities and other universities. And there are several library data centers. Comparatively speaking, library level data centers are less than and weaker than the national ones and institutional ones, considering the quantity, the funding, and the impact. So I think the libraries are expected to strengthen data curation and data services. Here is the registration and the certification of the repositories. There are only about 1% repositories registered in resuitedata.org or CORE or Open Door. And specifically, there are only 4 repositories certificated by World Data System, and only 6 repositories were certificated by Core Trust Seal. And also, more and more data repositories in mainland China have been academic publishers' trusted partners. And the second part is 3W of open research, open data services. Back to the 20 national scientific data centers, 589 user service cases are collected and analyzed according to 3W model. That's served for whom, what is served, and with what effect. They are specifically means the data users, the contents, the value and the impact. The first W is data users. The users are classified into 5 types. The institutes, universities, and the researchers are the major users, occupying over 80% of the total users. And then the enterprise, industries, and the markets, and the public, the government, and hospitals. The second W is what is served. It's service content. The contents are classified into 3 types. Direct data services include data search, data download, copy, and classification. And technical support include various content, data-based algorithms, modeling, visualization, evaluation, and so on, and also hybrid services, including both of them. And the top content of services are data provide, data download, technical support, data query, retrieval, analysis, data processing, collection, management, distribution, sharing, and parameter support. And the third W, the data value are categorized as scientific and technological value, economic value, and social value. In the scientific and technological phase, it includes finding research topics and questions, exploring, producing research outputs, outreach, assessment, and evaluation. And the value indicators include the quality, the quantity, innovation, and transparency. And according to our research, the most frequently data value realized and proposed are supporting a program named LAMOST, supporting data publications, improving work efficiency, receiving users' things, playing an important role in the activities, reducing the workload, help get good results, provide scientific evidence for the work, educating graduate students, meet users' needs, improving convenience, achieving phased progress, and improving China's international impact in specific fields. And then the third part is promotional activities of open data. So firstly, why we organize the promotional activities about open data? I think there are at least 3 considerations to arise the awareness and the willingness of open data and data sharing, and to improve the ability of data-driven innovation and research, especially for early career researchers and graduate students, and to advertise for the data repository, data center, and data banks themselves for more data use, reuse, and data submissions. And then what data can be used during the activities? There are 2 kinds. The first is data deposited in the data centers can be used by the participants, and the participants can also collect original data by themselves. And thirdly, what should be left after the activities? Firstly, the original data sets collected by the participants must be deposited in the data repository, and they should submit their creative works for further use. And during the whole activities, various data science trainings, data literacy trainings, data skill trainings will be provided by the libraries and the librarian. So how to participate the activities for a reader or user or author? The individual participants or a team can submit a research paper or a research report or a mobile application design or smart hardware design or other creative designs to the holders. Taking Shanghai Library and its data contest as the example, the winner will get at most 100,000 yuan as the award, according to their prize. According to the statistics, as we can see, the activities every year can cover over 100 universities and attract over 2,000 participants and received many creative works. So I think these promotional activities attracted nationwide attentions. And we can enjoy some of the excellent creative designs from the contest held by Shanghai Library. And finally, there are some challenges and the prospects of open data in China. I think there are at least 4 aspects. The first is how to realize a sustainable development of data repositories, sustainable funding, sustainable data submissions. And the second is open data policy and infrastructures. We still have no exact open data policies, and we also need developing whole open science cloud like European Open Science Cloud. And thirdly, we should engage with more stakeholders like libraries, universities, and scientific journals and publishers. And finally, I think we should form data sharing cultures improving the awareness and the willingness of data sharing, especially among our researchers, and protect their data rights. And that's all for my presentations. Thank you for your listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zhifang. Wow, that is really very inspiring to look at the promotional activities of open data in China. I think it's really impressive looking at the awards that are given out. One of the things that my university is looking at is how do we encourage open science, and that's why the research data management librarians and unit is transformed into an open science unit. And one of the things that we were looking at would be giving away open science awards. So I think the examples you shared are really enlightening. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Zhifang. Now we'd like to invite Ting Ray to share with us. Dr. Chuang Ting Ray is I think he's the founder of this Depositor. I think he will share with us a little bit more about Depositor. So yeah, without further ado, let me pass you the airtime, Ting Ray.
Okay, hello, I'm
Yes.
Ting Ray Chuang. I'm a researcher at the Institute of Information Science, Academia Sinica, Taiwan. I will talk about open repository for scholarly communication and participatory research. I will first make a brief introduction to the Depositor, a research data repository we built. I will later give a small tour on how it works. The Depositor is an open repository, a data repository open to all for restrictions. The registration is free, anyone can use it. It's also free software. The source code is free to download, and it built upon CCAN, an open source package for setting up open data portals. But we extend CCAN and made the extension available to the public under the AGPL 3.0, which is a license CCAN use. One of our main goals is the dataset hosted at the Depositor will be fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. I think we achieved this goal. Note that the Depositor is a data depository, not a data publisher. By some definition, a publisher engaged in acquisition, copy editing, production, e-printing, marketing, and the distributions, while a depository is a place where something is deposited as for storage, safekeeping, and the preservations. Then I will move on to open science in Asia later in this presentation. The Depositor was formally launched in 2018 at the Pacific Neighborhood Consortium annual meeting and the joint meeting in San Francisco, United States. This is a photo of our presentation at the time. Here a slide I used 3 years ago. I think this slide pretty much stay the same and speak of our approach. Allow me to read out the slides again. So I think research data management is infrastructure work. It's basic, but not sexy. Often there's a mismatch in needs and the resource. And one need to develop a culture of collaboration, and often there's a priority in coordinating the resources and collaboration, and there need to be a community of practice. And our approach is, I would like to say the infrastructure found below with small pieces. So we use common license for categories, format, and protocol. And we use existing tools like CCAN and the reference like Wikidata. And we like to pull resources together, and we engage in communications. Now I give a tour of the depository. In Mandarin, we call it 研究资料提存所. Here we look at the actual data set from the depository on coil real soundscape in Okinawa, Japan. On the left is the page you will get about this data set, the depository website. I will highlight some place for us to look into. There are long description about the data set and the project, and the data set can include multiple data files, as well as a link to external resources. And you can use the tag and the Wikidata keyword to annotate a data set. And the metadata come in 3 categories: basic information, spatial temporal information, and the management information. There are also license citation information attached to a data set. There are machine-readable data endpoint to access the data set and its metadata. So let's break into 3 parts. On the left of this page, you will see title and description about the data set. And here you see the project and about its descriptions. And the project can deposit as many data sets as you like. Here at the middle of the page, you see data file and the link to external resource that together constitute this data set. The Explore button will take you to the files. On the left, you see that this data set is CC license. And here are the citation snippets for people to cite this data set. Okay, this is the last part. And you can see text and Wikidata keywords for this data set, as well as the data set's temporal resolution and the spatial coverage. On the left, you see the map showing the spatial coverage, as well as a machine-readable endpoints. The depository is a bilingual interface, so I'm showing you the Chinese, traditional Chinese interface for the same page. Please take a look at the Wikidata keywords. Now it displayed Chinese label instead of English label, so you see 2 汉字 深景 instead of soundscape. It's labeled Wikidata keywords. This is the end of our tool. Since 2018, we have made an improvement to the depository because the data catalog published by the depository use standard vocabularies. So the data set, the catalog has been indexed by the Google Dataset search. As the service has been available to the public for a while, so we also get to know more about the community using it. In addition to the researcher, there are also citizen group users. For example, nonprofit organization working on ecological impact assessment of public works has been using our service to document their works. We also have a turnout service and a privacy policy. We also tasked with outreach activity about research data management because of the grant we received from the Ministry of Science and Technology of Taiwan. And we organize a research data management workshop. We are on Twitter as well. Now I wish to share a few thoughts on using data repository for scholarly communication and participatory research. For example, let's take a this paper and in the data ability section, he said auto data set used in preparing this paper are available from the author, and the data set is available on the depository. And the author provide a link. And if we click on the link, and we will find the data set at the depository. Sorry. The creator of this data set provide a social publication, which is in the Journal of Biological conservations. I think it's somewhere here. And if you click on it, you go back to this data set. So the data set and publication are linked to each other. This is a wonderful reference. And you can also discover this data set by Google dataset search. So you search for coral reef soundscape, and then you get several data set, and this data set is second in the list. And then you click on the label, and then you back to depositor. You can also search by Hanzi character, like you will input Lao Chou K, and you will go to a data set that on the depositor. Here, I actually show you two links to external resource. The first one is a mosaic of also photos. It says a link to Open Oreo map webpage. The second is 360-degree panorama in the way of Google Street views. At this point, I wish to share some of my observation and thought. First of all, I think open science is more about advocacy than policy as now. At least in Taiwan, we do not see at this point high-level national policy on open science. For example, how will open science be funded, and what to expect of its outcome, internal research assessment, or even evaluation and metrics. So which approach will you researchers and the research institution go to advocate open science? Will you go for a top-down policy change, or will you go for a bottom-up cultural change? In my view, open repository is a bottom-up step in cultivating a culture of openness by practicing what we preach, by actually making data available, even when there is no high-level data policy in relation to open science in the countries. And another question is, why will we need to build our own data repository? I think part of the motivation is to serve and to know our community better. Often there are cultural and language issues, and there are different local needs. Are happy that they can talk to people in Taiwan for support and about their needs. By building our own data repository, we'll also get to learn all the details and help others replicate our skills. I will also suggest that in building one's own data repository, one should reuse as much as possible. This includes source code, common vocabulary, standard service, etc. And then I come to the difficult questions, how to sustain a do-it-yourself data repository. I do not have good answer, but I think it will depend on stable funding and persistent advocacy. Here are some work in progress. I will quickly go over the plans. We will use the archival resource key for persistent identifier. We also gain on support for large collection of media file. For example, for a real image generated by joint surveys. They also tasks related to data management too. Here are some of the screenshots of the research data management workshop that we organized in 2018 and this year. And we set our website called Research Data Management Hub, and we hope to outreach to the research community in Taiwan about good research data management practice. Early this year, we translate into Taiwanese Mandarin the excellent guide from Science Europe, practice guide to the International Alignment of Research Data Management. Again, I show you some screenshots of the depository website. Currently, there are about 150 projects using the service. 2,000 datasets has been deposited to it, and of which about 1,000 datasets are open data. Thank you. The depositor website is at data.depositor.io. Please check it out. Please send us email as well. We'd love to hear from you. The depositor project team consists of myself and He Xuan, Li Chenzhen, Mu Yijia, and Wang Jiaxun. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ting Rui. That is really very insightful to hear from you about the data repository which you started from scratch using the open source software CCAN. You raised a very good question about are DIY data repositories sustainable? The question of sustainability was also mentioned by Zhifang in her presentation earlier. Yeah, so this is a big topic, and in fact, it was indicated as an interesting topic of potential discussion that came out from an earlier activity that we did this year. Yeah, so questions about sustainability of services, curation services, about sustaining the infrastructure, the collection development, etc. So I think, yeah, that is something that we could also hear from the members of today's meeting. So thanks very much, Ting Rui, once again. We would now like to invite Dr. Megumi Ikeda, Dr. Nobutada Yokouchi from Japan. So I understand that they are research associates from Center for Social Research and Data Archives, Institute of Social Science, the University of Tokyo. So over to you, Megumi and Nobutada.
Can you see my slide?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, let's start. Hello, everyone. We are honored to be invited to this wonderful breakout session. I'm Megumi Ikeda from Social Science Japan Data Archive at the University of Tokyo, Japan. Today, I and my colleague, Mr. Nobutada Yokouchi, would like to talk about the current issues and aspects of the Social Science Japan Data Archive in the era of open science. I will be in charge of the presentation, and Mr. Yokouchi will be in charge of the panel discussion part. Sorry. Sorry. I'm sorry. Slide is okay. Can you see me?
Yes, I can see your slide.
Sorry. Okay. Let's start. We divided our presentation into two parts. First, I would like to give you some introduction to Ssjda. Secondly, I am going to talk about the current challenges and the prospects of Ssjda. First of all, let me introduce Ssjda. Ssjda, which stands for Social Science Japan Data Archive, was founded in 1996. Ssjda collects, maintains, and provides access to various research data in social science for academic research and education. Ssjda is one of the most famous data archives of social science in Japan. This is a brief history of Ssjda. Ssjda aims to promote empirical research in the social science and has been disseminating archive data science since 1998. We have been moving online over the past decade, and in 2009, we began providing data downloads, and in 2014, we switched all usage applications and usage report online. In 2010, we were authorized by MEX as a joint usage research center, and in 2018, we are authorized by JSPS as a core institution for constructing data infrastructure for the humanity and social science. Ssjda is involved in many aspects of the research data lifecycle. There are three main things we do: collecting data, creating data, and sharing data. First, let's talk about collecting data. We are dealing with quantitative data obtained from social surveys in the field of sociology, economics, political science, education, and so on. The depositors include researchers, research institutions, and companies. Most of the datasets we received are based on probabilistic sampling. Currently, we do not accept aggregated, qualitative, or non-numerical data. Second, let's talk about creating data. Here is an example of Ssjda's staff's role. We manage depositors' personal information, maintain confidentiality of respondents, make the data sustainable for public use, prepare metadata data documentation, and translate metadata, data label, and questionnaire into English. Finally, let's talk about data sharing. We provide data only to researchers and graduate students who belong to academic institutions, and to researchers from private sector who belong to institutions that deposit data with Ssjda. The condition of use include academic use only, no registration or usage fees, and the period of use of the permitted data is basically 1 year. Here are some statistics. The Ssjda was started in 1998 with less than 300 datasets, but now more than 2,000 datasets are available. And the number of research applicants has increased from 11 in 1998 to 1,220 in 2020. Now that we have introduced Ssjda, so let's talk about the challenges and prospects of Ssjda. We have 5 challenges and prospects as shown here. First, there are challenges in collaborating with the libraries. There are too many challenges. First, there is very little collaboration between data archives and libraries. And second, there are limited career paths for data professionals such as data librarians. To solve these problems, we are inviting overseas librarians and holding study sessions. We are also planning to create a librarian position and utilize people who have studied library and information science in the future. The second challenges and prospects is to sustain the data curation service. Since Ssjda is not a national archive, funding tends to be unstable and insufficient. In addition, Many positions are fixed term and unstable, making long-term career development difficult. Furthermore, as shown in the figure, the number of graduate students in Japan is on the decline. 30 years ago, 25% of students who completed their master's degree went to higher education, but today only about 8% do. So there is also concern about potential staff shortage. The third challenge and prospect is to archive various types of data. Currently, only quantitative data is being archived. In the future, we plan to work on archiving quantitative data such as interview data and big data such as data obtained from social media. The fourth challenge and prospect is to developing a new online analysis system. We are developing a user-friendly online data analysis system in place of Nestor, which stops its updating. The new online analysis system has features such as being easily accessible to people who are not familiar with quantitative analysis, accessible from smartphones, and allowing analysis by people who are not eligible to apply for datasets. The fifth challenging and prospect is building an interoperable and comprehensive repository. In recent years, our data has become searchable on several comprehensive platforms for searching datasets in Japan. For example, our metadata can be searched on Shiny Research. We are also collaborating with JSPS to construct a comprehensive data catalog for research datasets. However, interoperability of international archives and data searching system has not progressed sufficiently. For further internationalization, we are working on getting the metadata in English and the Quartz Shield. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Megumi. So now, may I invite everyone to turn on your video if you want, if you don't mind, and to perhaps feel free to point out a few points that you want to discuss. I can't quite seem to see may I invite our speakers to turn on your videos? Okay, so thanks very much. I see a question in the chat from Jagadish. Yeah, Jagadish, thanks for joining us today. Jagadish is from Nepal. So Jagadish, would you like to turn on your video and maybe you'd like to share with us your thoughts and your comments?
Thank you, sure.
Yeah, thanks.
I have a question with Jiang, if I correctly pronounced it.
Zhifang.
Jifang. Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank all the speakers. The session was very interesting, and you all put your good thought in this session. I have a question with Jifang. She had mentioned in her paper, there is a challenge of data sharing culture in China. People hardly share the data. So is there any policy in your institution or your government that any publicly funded research should be mandatorily share their data in open access repository? Is there any such kind of the provision?
Hi, I see your questions in the chat box, and yeah, you asked, do you have any mandatory policy for public funded research? Yeah, we have in 2014, our country launched the open access policies, but that policy are not requested, just encourage the researchers. But when we developed our data repositories, the big research project funded by the national government will be asked and requested to submit their data to the data repositories. Yeah, that's a process.
So there is a policy that asks for the data to be made available. Yeah. So yes, Naresh.
Yes, I would like to add in this. If we talk about India, we have a national open policy that all the organizations which are funding from the central government to the researchers, whatever they produce, whatever publications they bring out, that will be kept in open access. So we have Department of Biotechnology, Department of Science and Technology, we have Council of Science and Industrial Research, we have Indian Council of Agriculture Research. So these organizations, publications and journals, they publish many journals, and those are all in open access. And we are bringing up another one nation, one subscription, which is in draft mode. So if that happens, then all the researchers across India will get the subscription of the journals. Means
Thanks.
Government will pay for it. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So it looks like for China and India, there are national policies that are driving this. This is related to the question raised by Tom Honeyman. Tom, would you like to unmute and raise a question, or if you'd like to turn on your video?
Sure, I can do that. So I'm curious, policy is one side of the equation, but often where we see changes or the driving force for change is in key communities that actually demonstrate the behaviors that we're looking for in open science. And my question is to each of the panelists, where do you see those key communities in each location?
Tingray, would you like to go first?
In my opinion, I don't see there's a large open science community yet in Taiwan. Of course, there are researchers advocate open science, especially about the sharing of research data. But it's more at this stage. I think it's more community-driven activity. That I'm researcher, you are researchers. So this working together, and let's share data. And also let's share data with our collaborator, either in Taiwan or elsewhere in the world. And we do this activity, I think, without high-level policy requirements. So it's more like, at this stage, I see it's more like a bottom-up community efforts. That's my opinions.
Very ground-up driven at this point of time. How about Nobutada? Would you like to add? How's the case like for Japan? Is it ground up as well?
Okay, I may rephrase the question as who are the key stakeholders of open science in Japan? Well, I think mainly it is maybe us, data archives, maybe one of the key stakeholders, because as we presented in our presentation that we started when there were still no governmental level policies yet. And now it is kind of, the Japanese government is kind of catching up situation now. So it may also relate to the first question, that what are the government level policies related to data management. If I may share some additional slides. So actually government has just started to implement some of the major policies related to data management. As you can, as you can see, that the Japanese government has recently reported that by 2023, all public funded projects are required to submit data management plan. And also by 2025, all universities and other research institutes with institutional repositories are required to implement data policy. So the government is kind of catching up the situation right now. So that's my understanding in terms of Japan.
Yeah, thanks very much, Nobutada. How about Sandy? Would you like to add on?
Welcome. No worries. Thanks for the question, Tom. When you asked the question, I immediately panicked because it's actually quite a challenging question to answer from my end. Do you mind if I ask, do you mean open practices specifically in terms of data or just in general?
Let's generously say any open data, but also other open practices as well.
Sure, no problems. So again, so in Southeast Asia, there are a few players. On the larger international and national government level, a lot of the science institutes are beginning to introduce open science policies, as well as on a higher level, the International Science Council, Regional Office for Asia and Pacific, led by Mazlan Othman, is very much championing open science. We've got the Malaysian Open Science Platform is very much championing that in Malaysia. However, in the Philippines and Thailand, it's very much a grassroots level. It's very much a grassroots group, where if there's not a lot of organizations, that national organizations, what we see is there are a lot of field-specific organizations that transcend borders that generate a lot of the change. One example of that is the Society for Improvement for Psychological Science that we see. And from within that group, they started a lot of the movements in pre-registration, registered reports, a lot of how we think about open science. In Indonesia, we have this WhatsApp group, interestingly, which is aptly dubbed Good Science Indonesia, which is a collection of librarians, researchers, journalists, policymakers, people from government, who just come together and talk every day about how we can do it. So it's a much more organic sort of fireside chat that actually does have results. So my takeaway is that if there's a national organization, that's usually great. But if there's no national organization, grassroots or otherwise, field-specific organizations that transcends borders tend to sort of have influence what's happening there.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. There is a comment and a question by Yasuhiro. Yasuhiro, would you like to tell us more about your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm afraid that the time is running out, and I'm sorry for inserting this question at this
That's
moment.
all right. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Certainly, I'm interested in how the situation is in your country or in your community for the people who are working on the research data infrastructure, about the situation on the collaboration between the information technology or science or experts and data users who should be researchers or scientists or experts in the other domain science areas. Optimization of the platform for that kind of each individual domains could be the key to make a very effective use of the data platform for me. And so if anybody can describe your situation briefly, then I will be very much happy. Thank you very much.
Any volunteers? We may have time for just one sharing. Tingri?
Yes, our own experience, like we have some interaction with the biodiversity and the ecological researchers because of previous connections. I agree with you that because, for example, my background is in information science, and we need to reach out to other research disciplines about open science, about data management. And that's the purpose of our organizations of research data management workshop earlier this last month.
That's great.
Thanks. Thanks. Thanks, Tingri. Sorry, Yasuhiro?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes. If there's anybody who gives another answer, how they look to from Cass, about the data platform.
Is there anyone else who would like to add on? If not, may I ask Zhifang this question? Zhifang, I picked up from your slide, you mentioned that for library data repositories, quantity is low and collaboration, there is a bigger room for it to become bigger. So you were comparing the different levels of data repositories, like those by the institutional libraries, those by the national levels. So what would be your aspiration for library managed data repositories?
In China, currently, the data repositories are mainly developed and managed by the institutes, because libraries it's hard for libraries to have the data from researchers. That means researchers are unwilling to deposit their data to library. They are unwilling to submit their data to libraries because maybe they think library is not very important to them.
Yes. So
yeah.
what would be your wish list to address that?
So I think libraries should involve more with in the data repository and cooperate more with the research institute. The research institute have their researchers' data library don't have, but library can provide services based on their data.
Yeah, thanks very much, Fang. So it does sound like library could perhaps bring in onto the table some perhaps points about the sustainability and the research data archives that are shared by Nobu Tada, Megumi, Tingri. They are very ground up researchers manage data archives, and perhaps we need to see how we can build on that connection and collaboration to make it a win-win for the whole ecosystem. So may I invite Birgit to help us with some closing remarks?
Yeah, so we are running out of time. It's already closing at 10. So thank you all for participating, and in particular, of course, to Gosu and Neve for organizing and bringing these presentations together. I enjoyed it very much. I mean, it's super interesting on how these bottom-up and top-down activities meet. So still lots of work to do. And I also are fully in line with this. We are kind of moving, of course, from the RDM to the open science broad spirit in this field. And yeah, but it's still, of course, both needed. I mean, in terms of attention to the details of nitty-gritty of RDM and the broad engagement issues. So thank you all, and hope to see you next time. And also, if you have any suggestions for the libraries for research data interest group, please come forward, mail to the co-chairs, and we are happy to organize, because we have a long history as the group, moving from topic to topic from the library perspective. And of course, had lots of things which are now interest groups on its own, because it's kind of a mature stage of library engagement in RDA. Hope to see you again, and have a nice day, evening, morning, whatever.
Yeah.
Time zone.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Birgit. Yeah, and I'd like to say a big thank you to all the presenters. So it's really a very informative session. Hope to stay in touch beyond this session. Enjoy the rest of the RDA plenary. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.